March 2026. An island of 11 million people goes dark. No electricity, no lights, no signal. Just the sound of pots banging in the darkness. Rewind, January 2026. A dictator vanishes from his fortress at 2 in the morning. His guards, gone. His allies, scattered. 27 years of power, over before sunrise. Rewind again, 539 BC. The greatest city on earth is throwing a party. 1,000 guests. Golden cups stolen from a holy temple. And while the king drinks, a hand appears on the wall and writes the end of everything. 3 empires, 3 fortresses that were supposed to be untouchable, and one ancient pattern that connects all of them. By the end of this video, you'll see something in the book of Daniel that most people have never noticed, and you'll never read the news the same way again. Let's open the scroll. The book of Daniel, chapter 5. Most people know this story by one phrase, the writing on the wall. It's become part of the English language, but very few people have actually read what was written. And even fewer understand why it was written that specific night. Let me set the scene. Verse 1. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. 1,000 guests. This is not a private dinner. This is a display of power, and Belshazzar is drinking in full view of his court to show them that he fears nothing. But then he crosses a line. Verses 3 and 4. They brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem. And the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. These weren't just any cups. These were sacred vessels, taken from the temple in Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar decades earlier. And now Belshazzar is using them as party favors. He's not just being careless, he is making a statement. And here's the detail that stops me every time. While this feast is happening, while the wine is flowing and the music is playing, the army of Cyrus the Great is camped outside the walls. Babylon is under siege, and the king is throwing a party. He believes the walls will hold. He believes the river that flows through the city makes it impossible to breach. He believes he has 20 years' worth of supplies stored inside. He's not worried. He's celebrating. Now, I want to be clear. We're exploring this as students of history and scripture. This isn't about predicting the future. This is about understanding patterns. And what we find in Daniel chapter 5 is remarkable. Verse 25. The words that appeared. MENE, MENE, TEKEL, UPHARSIN. 4 words. In Aramaic, the street language of Babylon. Not Hebrew, not Persian. The language everyone in that room would have spoken. And yet, not one of the king's wise men could read them. Only Daniel, an exile, a captive from Jerusalem, the outsider. He's the only one who can decode the message. And here's what each word means. MENE, from the root to number. God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. TEKEL, from the same root as shekel, a unit of weight. You have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. And peres, the singular of UPHARSIN, meaning divided. But here's what most people miss. Peres also sounds like paras, the Hebrew word for Persia. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Persians. The very name of the conqueror was hidden inside the verdict. Now ask yourself, what kind of leader throws a party while his kingdom is being surrounded? What kind of empire looks unshakable on the outside, but is already hollow on the inside? Hold that question, because to understand why Babylon fell that night, and not a year earlier, not a month later, but that exact night, we need to go inside the walls of the most powerful city the ancient world had ever built. And what we find there will sound very, very familiar. To understand the fall of Babylon, you first have to understand how impossible it was supposed to be. This was not some minor city. This was the capital of the known world. Under Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar's grandfather, Babylon had become the most magnificent city on earth. Its outer walls stretched 11 miles around the city. They were 26 feet thick, wide enough for 2 chariots to ride side by side on top. And the Euphrates River flowed directly through the center, providing water, trade, and a natural defense that no army could easily cross. The ancient historian Herodotus, who visited Babylon about 80 years after its fall, wrote that the city surpassed in splendor any city in the known world. And the people inside knew it. They had enough grain stored to last 20 years. They had the river for water. They had walls that no battering ram could break. Babylon was, by every measure, untouchable. But here's what was happening behind the scenes that nobody in that banquet hall knew. And this is the part that changes everything. When Nebuchadnezzar died in 562 BC, Babylon entered a period of chaos. 4 kings ruled in just 7 years. One was assassinated. One was a child who lasted weeks. And then came Nabonidus, a man more interested in archaeology and the moon god's sin than in running an empire. He did something no Babylonian king had ever done. He left. He moved to Timah in the Arabian desert and stayed there for 10 years. He left his son, Belshazzar, to manage the empire alone. Now, Belshazzar was a capable soldier, but he was a terrible politician. The Nabonidus Chronicle, a clay tablet now in the British Museum, tells us that the priests of Marduk, Babylon's chief god, were furious. Nabonidus had canceled the New Year festival, the most sacred ceremony in the kingdom, for 11 consecutive years. The priesthood felt abandoned, the merchants felt neglected, and Belshazzar, despite holding power, was never officially crowned king. He was a regent without a mandate. This is critical. The empire looked strong from the outside, but inside, it was fracturing. And here's a fact that most people completely miss. When Cyrus the Great marched toward Babylon in 539 BC, he didn't just bring an army. He brought a message. The Cyrus Cylinder, one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever found. Records that Cyrus claimed the god Marduk himself had chosen him to take Babylon. He wasn't just a conqueror. He positioned himself as a liberator. And the priests of Marduk believed him. Now watch what happens. In early October 539 BC, Cyrus's general Ugbaru defeated the Babylonian army at the Battle of Opis. Nabonidus fled to the nearby city of Borsippa. And then Cyrus did something brilliant. Instead of attacking Babylon's massive walls head-on, walls that could withstand any siege, he went upstream. He ordered his engineers to dig canals and divert the Euphrates River. The water level dropped, and on the night of a great festival, the very night Belshazzar was lifting those golden cups, Persian soldiers walked into Babylon through the dry riverbed, under the walls, through the one gap no one had thought to guard. Now I need you to really focus here, because this is the part that makes Daniel 5 one of the most historically verified chapters in the entire Bible. Both Herodotus and Xenophon, Greek historians writing independently of each other and of the Bible, confirm the same details. Herodotus writes that the Babylonians were dancing and celebrating a holiday, which happened to fall then. Xenophon records that the city was in the middle of a certain festival and was accustomed to drink and revel all night long. And the Nabonidus Chronicle confirms that Babylon was taken with minimal resistance. The Cyrus Cylinder says the city was entered without battle. Think about this. A book written from the perspective of a Jewish exile, Daniel, tells us there was a feast, there was a king, and the city fell that night. Greek historians who had no connection to the Hebrew text confirm the feast and the festival, and a Babylonian clay tablet confirms the city fell without a major battle. 3 independent sources. Same night. Same story. For over a century, scholars doubted that Belshazzar even existed because his name appeared nowhere outside the Bible. Then, in 1854, archaeologists discovered cuneiform inscriptions that named him as the son of Nabonidus, serving as co-regent. Daniel was right. The man that history forgot was there all along. So let's lay it out. An empire that looked invincible, a leader who ignored the warnings, a city partying while the enemy found a way in that no one expected, and a message on the wall that said, "Your days are numbered. You've been weighed. You've been found wanting. It's over." That was 539 BC. Now here's what happened in our world in just 90 days. And when you see these 3 stories side by side, you'll understand why the phrase "writing on the wall" isn't just an expression. It's a pattern. And it just played out again. Now let's overlay these 2 timelines, the ancient and the modern. And I'm going to show you 3 parallels that, once you see them, you cannot unsee. The first parallel, the untouchable fortress. Babylon believed it could not fall. 26-foot walls, a river running through it, 20 years of food. No army had ever breached those defenses. And so the king threw a feast, not despite the siege, but because of it. It was a message to his enemies. We are not afraid. Now consider January 3rd, 2026. Nicolas Maduro had ruled Venezuela for 27 years under the Chavista system. His personal compound was inside Fort Tiuna, a heavily guarded military base in Caracas. His security detail included 32 Cuban special forces. He had survived sanctions, protests, an attempted drone assassination, and international isolation. He told his inner circle he was untouchable. On the night of January 2nd, he went to sleep in his fortress. By sunrise, he was on a U.S. warship heading to New York in handcuffs. And just like Babylon, the breach came from the inside. Reports confirmed that a CIA source had been operating within the Venezuelan government for months, tracking Maduro's movements, his sleep schedule, his location. The walls didn't fall from the outside. They were opened from within. Just as the priests of Marduk opened the gates for Cyrus, someone inside Fort Tiuna opened the door for the team that came at 2 in the morning. The second parallel, the confident leader who didn't see it coming. Belshazzar was not a fool. He was a capable military commander. He knew Cyrus was outside, but he had calculated the odds and decided, rationally, that Babylon's defenses would hold. He was confident. He was wrong. Now consider February 25th, 2026. 3 days before the coalition strikes began, Iran's foreign minister publicly declared that a historic agreement with the United States was within reach. Negotiations in Oman had been progressing. Diplomats were optimistic. Iran was so confident in the diplomatic process that it had increased oil exports to 3 times the normal rate in the weeks before, locking in revenue, preparing for a deal. And then, on February 28th, the strikes came. Without warning, the supreme leader and dozens of senior officials were gone in the opening hours. The parallel is striking. Belshazzar feasted because he believed the walls would hold. Iran negotiated because it believed diplomacy would hold. Both were calculating. Both were rational. And both were blindsided, not because they were stupid, but because they could not imagine the unimaginable. And the third parallel, this is the one that stopped me in my tracks. The third parallel, the darkness that comes from within. When Babylon fell, it didn't just lose a king. It lost the system that kept it running. The priesthood had already turned. The merchants had already lost faith. The father had already abandoned his post. The fall was just the final symptom of a collapse that had been building for years. Now, consider Cuba. 67 years under the same system. And for decades, it survived, largely because of one lifeline: Venezuelan oil. When Maduro fell in January, that lifeline was severed. No oil, no fuel for the aging power plants. And on March 16, 2026, 11 million people woke up to total darkness. The entire electrical grid collapsed. But here's what makes this parallel so powerful. The people didn't just sit in silence. In the city of Moron, hundreds of Cubans stormed the local Communist Party headquarters. They dragged out furniture, documents, portraits, and burned them in the street. Voices in the dark shouting one word: Libertad, freedom. And for the first time in 67 years, the government admitted it was talking to Washington. The writing wasn't on a palace wall this time. It was in the darkness itself, and everyone could read it. 3 regimes, 3 fortresses. January, a dictator is pulled from his compound at 2 in the morning. February, a supreme leader is gone in a flash while his diplomats are still shaking hands. March, an island goes dark and its people set fire to the symbols of power. 90 days. And 2,500 years ago, Daniel stood in a banquet hall and read 4 words that described all of it. Numbered, weighed, divided. But the real question isn't whether this pattern exists. You've seen it? It's there. The real question is, what does it mean? Not for empires, not for dictators, for you, for the person watching this right now. Here's what I think Daniel 5 is really about. And it's not what most people expect. This story is not about revenge. It's not about a God who enjoys watching empires burn. Look at the text carefully. Before Daniel reads the writing, he says something to Belshazzar that most people skip right over. He says, "You knew all this." Daniel reminds the king that his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had already been humbled by God, driven mad, stripped of power, and then restored. That story was known. The lesson was available, and Belshazzar ignored it. The word TEKEL, weighed and found wanting, is not a curse. It's an audit. It's the language of the marketplace. You put something on the scale, and it simply doesn't weigh what it claims to weigh. There's a gap between the label and the reality. And that gap, that distance between what a thing claims to be and what it actually is, that's what brings empires down. Not armies, not missiles. The gap. Think about it. Babylon's walls were real. Venezuela's military was real. Iran's missile program was real. Cuba's control apparatus was real. None of them fell because they were weak. They fell because they were hollow. The strength was on the surface. The fracture was underneath. And when the weight of reality finally pressed down on the scale, the number didn't add up. And here's the part that makes this personal. Daniel 5 doesn't just ask questions about kings. It asks questions about all of us. What are you building your confidence on? What walls do you trust that might not hold? What label have you put on your life that might not match what is actually on the scale? This isn't about fear. This is about honesty. The same God who wrote on that wall doesn't write to destroy. He writes to reveal. And revelation, even when it's uncomfortable, is always an act of mercy. Because the only thing worse than seeing the truth is not seeing it until it's too late. Empires come and go. Babylon lasted 70 years. The Chavista system lasted 27. Some kingdoms endure for centuries, others collapse in a quarter. But the pattern Daniel identified, the gap between the label and the weight, the distance between the projection and the truth, that pattern is as old as human power itself. And the only thing that doesn't get weighed and found wanting is the word that was written before any empire was built. We started this video in darkness, an island with no power, A fortress breached at midnight. A hand writing on a wall while a king held a stolen cup. 3 empires. 3 moments when the thing that looked permanent turned out to be temporary. And 1 ancient text that described the pattern 25 centuries before it played out again. But here's what I want to leave you with. Daniel wasn't afraid that night. He was the calmest person in the room, while the king trembled and the wise men failed. Daniel, an exile, a captive, a man with no power of his own, stood up and spoke truth. And that truth outlasted the empire that held him prisoner. Walls fall, power shifts, thrones change hands. But the word that was written on that wall is still being read today. And if that word endures, then so does every promise attached to it. Before you go, I want to pray over you. Lord, I pray for every single person hearing this right now, wherever they are, driving home, lying in bed, cooking dinner with this playing in the background. We've walked through the book of Daniel today. We've seen walls that were supposed to last forever come down in a single night. And if we're honest, that's a little unsettling. Because we all have walls we trust. We all have things we lean on that we hope will hold. So I pray, not that you remove the shaking, but that you show us what can't be shaken. Your word outlasted Babylon. It outlasted every empire that tried to silence it. And it will outlast whatever is making the news tonight. Meet every person watching right where they are. Let what we study today become more than information. Let it become peace, and let them know, in their bones, that they are not forgotten. You see them, you know their name, and your plan is still unfolding. In your name, amen. If this opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen before, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, because we go deep on this channel. Every single week, we open another scroll and find another pattern that connects the ancient world to the one we're living in right now. And I'd love for you to be here when we do. Now here's my question for the comments. We looked at 3 modern parallels to Daniel 5, Venezuela, Iran, and Cuba. Which one surprised you the most? And is there another one I missed? Tell me. I read every single comment. And next time on Scrolls of Fire, we're going north, far north, to a land that the prophet Ezekiel named 2,600 years ago. A land that would forge an alliance with Persia. An alliance that scholars debated for centuries until this year, when it stopped being theory and became a headline. Ezekiel 38 is next. And what's written there will make you look at the map very differently. Until then, remember, walls fall, but the word endures.